The demise and cause of death to a group of hikers in Russia has been shrouded in mystery and conspiracy theories for over 60 years. Nearly 100 different theories have been expressed over the years, trying to explain the strange circumstances surrounding the tragic event that took the lives of 9 experienced hikers. Now, after all these years, a Russian official has announced the findings of what could very well be the last official look into this now famous mystery. But will the simple answer be accepted? Does it really explain what happened to those 9 people in the Ural Mountains? The Dyatlov Pass incident was an event that took the lives of 9 Russian hikers in the northern Ural Mountains between February 1st and 2nd, 1959, in uncertain circumstances. The experienced hiking group, who were all from the Ural Polytechnical Institute, had established a camp on the slopes of what is known as Dead Mountain, in an area now named in honor of the group's leader, Igor Dyatlov. During the night, something caused them to tear their way out of their tents and flee the campsite, all while severely underdressed for the heavy snowfall and sub-zero temperatures. After the group's bodies were discovered, an investigation by Soviet authorities determined that 6 had died from hypothermia, while the other 3 showed signs of physical trauma. One victim had a fractured skull. 2 others had major chest fractures, and the body of one of the group was missing both its eyes. One of the victims was missing a tongue. The initial investigation concluded that a compelling natural force had caused the deaths. Numerous theories have been put forward to account for the unexplained deaths, including animal attacks, hypothermia, avalanche, katabatic winds, infrasound-induced panic, military involvement, or some combination of these. One theory even suggested the group was attacked by a Russian Yeti. Russia opened a new investigation into the incident in 2019, and the conclusions were presented in July of 2020. In 1959, a group was formed for a skiing expedition across the northern Ural Mountains in the Soviet Union. Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old radio engineering student at the Ural Polytechnical Institute, was the leader of the expedition, who chose a group of 9 others for the trip, most of which were fellow students at the university. There were a total of 8 men and 2 women in the group. Each member of the group was an experienced Grade 2 hiker with ski tour experience and would be receiving Grade 3 certification upon their return. At the time, this was the highest certification available in the Soviet Union and required candidates to traverse 300 kilometers, or 190 miles. The goal of the team was to reach Gora Otorten, a mountain 6.2 miles north of the site of the incident. This particular route was estimated as Category 3 at the time, the most difficult. The group's train arrived at the town of Ivdel on the morning of January 25th, 1959. They then took a truck to Vizhai, the last inhabited settlement to the north. The skiers rested and dined on loaves of bread purchased in the village to keep their energy levels up for the following day's hike. On January 27th, they began their journey. But only one day into their trip, one of the members had to turn back due to health reasons. Yuri Yudin would leave the group because of severe knee and joint pain that made it impossible for him to continue the hike. The remaining group of 9 people continued on with the trek. Diaries and cameras found around their last campsite made it possible to track the group's route up to the day before the incident. On the 31st of January, the group arrived at the edge of a highland area and began to prepare for climbing. In a nearby valley, they left behind surplus food and equipment that would be used for the return trip. The following day, the group started to move through the pass. It appeared they planned to get through the pass and make camp the next night on the opposite side, but due to worsening weather conditions, snowstorms, and decreasing visibility, they lost their direction and deviated west, up towards the top of the mountain. When they realized what they had done, the group decided to stop and set up camp there on the slope of the mountain, rather than move nearly a mile downhill to an area of forest that would have offered some shelter from the bad weather. Uden later surmised that his former group leader probably did not want to lose the altitude they had gained, or he decided to practice camping on the mountain slope. Before he left, Dyatlov had agreed to send a telegram to their sports club as soon as the group returned to Vizhai. The telegram was expected to arrive no later than February 12th, but Dyatlov had told Uden before he had turned back, due to his physical ailments, that he expected it to be longer. When the 12th passed and no message had been received, no one became worried, as delays of a few days were common with such expeditions. On February 20th, relatives of the missing group demanded a rescue operation. The first rescue group consisted only of volunteer students and teachers. The Army and militia forces soon became involved, adding planes and helicopters to the rescue operation. On February 26th, searchers found the group's abandoned campsite and their badly damaged tent on the mountain. The campsite baffled the search party. The students who found the tent said the tent was half torn down and covered with snow. It was empty, and all the group's belongings and shoes had been left behind. Investigators reported that the tent had been cut open from the inside. 9 sets of footprints were found, left by people who were wearing only socks or a single shoe. Some were even barefoot. The tracks led down towards the edge of some nearby woods on the opposite side of the pass, just under a mile to the northeast. However, after about 500 meters, the tracks were covered with snow. At the edge of the forest, under a large Siberian pine, the searchers found the remains of a small fire. There they found the first 2 bodies, shoeless and dressed only in their underwear. Branches on the tree were broken up to 5 meters high, suggesting that one of the skiers had climbed up to look for something, possibly the camp. Between the pine tree and the camp, searchers found 3 more bodies. The group leader Dyatlov, along with 2 others. By the positioning of the bodies, it seemed they had died while attempting to return to the tent. They were found separately at distances of 300, 480, and 630 meters from the tree. It took 2 months to find the remaining 4 hikers. They were finally found on May 4th, under 13 feet of snow, in a ravine 75 meters further into the woods from the pine tree. 3 of the 4 were better dressed than the others, and there were signs that the ones who had died first had given some of their clothing to the others. One of the victims was wearing another's burned, torn trousers, and her left foot and shin were wrapped in a torn jacket. A legal inquiry began immediately after the first 5 bodies were found. A medical examination found no injuries that would have caused their deaths, and it was eventually concluded that they had all died of hypothermia. One of the hikers had a small crack in his skull, but it was determined not significant enough to cause his death. An examination of the 4 bodies that were found in May changed the direction of the narrative as to what had happened during the incident. 3 of the hikers had fatal injuries. 1 had major skull damage, and 2 others had major chest fractures. According to one investigator, the force required to cause such damage would be comparable to the force of a car crash. Oddly, the bodies had no external wounds associated with the bone fractures, as if they had been caused by an extremely large amount of pressure. All 4 bodies found at the bottom of the creek in a running stream of water had soft tissue damage to their head and face. 1 was missing her tongue, eyes, part of the lips, as well as facial tissue and a fragment of skull bone, while another was missing both his eyeballs and another both of his eyebrows. The forensic expert performing the post-mortem examination determined that these injuries happened post-mortem due to the location of the bodies in the stream. There was some early speculation that the indigenous Mansi people, reindeer herders that lived in the area, had attacked and murdered the group for trespassing on their lands. Several Mansi were interrogated, but the investigation indicated that the evidence did not support this hypothesis. Only the hikers' footprints were found, and there were no signs of a hand-to-hand struggle. Although the temperature was very low, around -13 to -22 degrees Fahrenheit, with a storm blowing, the dead were only partially dressed. Some of them had only one shoe, while others had no shoes or wore only socks. Some were found wrapped in pieces of ripped clothing that appeared to have been cut from those who were already dead. Journalists reporting on the available parts of the inquest files claim that it states, 6 of the group members died of hypothermia and 3 of fatal injuries. There were no indications of other people nearby on the mountain, apart from the 9 travelers. The tent had been ripped open from within. The victims had died 6 to 8 hours after their last meal. Traces from the camp showed that all group members left the campsite of their own accord on foot. High levels of radiation were found on only one victim's clothing. One investigator stated that the fatal injuries of the 3 bodies could not have been caused by another human being because the force of the blows had been too strong and no soft tissue had been damaged. Released documents contain no information about the condition of the skiers' internal organs. There were no survivors of the incident. At the time, it was concluded that the group members had all died because of some extreme natural force. The legal inquiry officially ended in May of 1959 as a result of the absence of a guilty party. The files were sent to a secret archive. In 1997, it was revealed that the negatives from one of the group members' cameras had been kept in the private archive of one of the investigators. The film material was donated by the investigator's daughter to the Dyatlov Foundation. The diaries of the hiking party became public domain in 2009. On April 12, 2018, the remains of one of the hikers were exhumed upon the request of journalists of a Russian tabloid newspaper. Contradicting results were obtained. One of the experts stated that the type of injuries resembled a person knocked down by a car, and the DNA analysis did not match the DNA of any living relatives. In addition, it turned out that the name exhumed hiker was not on the list of people buried at the cemetery. Regardless, a reconstruction was done based on the skull and matched post-war photographs of the hiker. Some journalists believe that another person was using the deceased hiker's name after World War II. In February of 2019, Russian authorities reopened the investigation into the incident, although only 3 possible explanations were being considered: an avalanche, a snow slab avalanche, or a hurricane. The possibility of a crime has been officially dismissed. Some other strange connections to the mystery event exist. A 12-year-old boy, who later became the head of the Dyatlov Foundation, attended 5 of the hikers' funerals. He recalled that their skin had a deep brown tan. Another group of hikers, 30 miles south of the incident, reported seeing strange orange spheres in the sky to the north on the night of the incident. Similar spheres were seen in and around the area continuously during the period from February to March of 1959 by various independent witnesses, including the Meteorology Service and members of the military. However, these sightings were not noted in the initial investigation in 1959, and these various independent witnesses only came forward years later. On July 11th, 2020, Andrei Kurikov, deputy head of the Urals Federal District Directorate of the Prosecutor General's Office, announced an avalanche to be the official cause of death for the Dyatlov group in 1959. Having left the tent, the group, altogether without panic, moved 50 meters away. They went to a stone ridge which served as a natural avalanche breaker. They did everything right. And here's the second reason why the group was let's say sentenced to death, why they never came back. When they turned around, they could not see the tent, he said, adding that night visibility was from 6 to 16 meters. Kuryakov said that the hikers had reached a cedar and made a fire, which burned for about an hour and a half. 2 members of the group died there from frostbite. The rest decided to split up the investigation established. One group was led by Igor Dyatlov and the other by instructor Semyon Zolotarev. The group led by Dyatlov began to crawl to the tent following their own tracks. They froze immediately after leaving the forest, since the temperature was 40 to 45 degrees Celsius below zero and there was a biting wind, he explained. The second group also went towards the tent, having made a walkway, but they accidentally triggered a movement of snow, were thrown away from the walkway, and buried under 3 meters of snow, Kuryakov continued. That was when the hikers received severe fractures caused by tons of snow pressing on them. It were those injuries that later caused a huge number of theories of what may have happened. It was a heroic struggle. There was no panic, but in those circumstances they had no chance of escape, Kuryakov added. However, there is much evidence that contradicts the avalanche theory. The location of the incident did not have any obvious signs of an avalanche having taken place. An avalanche would have left certain patterns and debris distributed over a wide area. The bodies found within a month of the event were covered with a very shallow layer of snow, and, had there been an avalanche of sufficient strength to sweep away the second party, these bodies would have been swept away as well. This would have caused more serious and different injuries in the process, and would have damaged the tree line. Over 100 expeditions to the region were held since the incident, and none of them ever reported conditions that might create an avalanche. A study of the area using up-to-date terrain-related physics revealed that the location was entirely unlikely for such an avalanche to have occurred. The dangerous conditions, found in another nearby area, which had significantly steeper slopes and cornices, were observed in April and May when the snowfalls of winter were melting. During February, when the incident occurred, there were no such conditions. An analysis of the terrain and the slope shows that even if there could have been a very specific avalanche that found its way around, its path would have gone past the tent. It had collapsed from the side, but not in a horizontal direction. Dyatlov was an experienced skier, and a member of the party who was much older, Zolotarev, was studying for his master's certificate in ski instruction and mountain hiking. Neither of these 2 men would have been likely to camp anywhere in the path of a potential avalanche. Footprint patterns leading away from the tent were inconsistent with someone, let alone a group of 9 people, running in panic from either real or imagined danger. All the footprints leading away from the tent and towards the woods were consistent with individuals who were walking at a normal pace. Did something mysterious happen to these 9 people that ultimately led to their deaths? Were they brutally attacked or victims of violence? Or is the answer simply a bad set of natural circumstances that led to their deaths? If so, why the secrecy? Why keep the files classified and hidden away from the public for so many years? What do you think happened? Let me know in the comments. If you like stories like this, hit the subscribe button, and be sure to send me your own encounter stories with the unknown to cryptidtalesmail@gmail.com.